Hello, Maverick fans. Welcome to another edition of the Mavpuckcast. Thank you again for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in, everybody.
John, I got some bad news. and I mean it's bad
I think
news.
I know what your bad news is.
I believe the first time at Baxter, the Penrose Cup will not be awarded.
I don't think this is the first time at Baxter, is it?
I don't know.
I don't know.
That's something that I don't even know.
I know.
But I know the last couple years in a row, it's been given out because the team that we've played at home ends up winning the cup, and it's like
last season it was during the Blizzard series.
It was
that St. Cloud State won the Penrose Cup, and I was trying to get a picture because a lot of St. Cloud people follow us on Twitter, and we follow them. Mm-hmm. And I thought they'd enjoy having a picture, and then the Baxter Arena usher tried to shoo us out quickly because apparently there was snow on the ground and they just wanted us to leave. So that was not, we weren't going anywhere fast at that point, but all right, fine. So yeah, no, I can't remember. I don't know if we had another presentation. I don't know. I can't.
It was North Dakota the year before, wasn't it?
Oh, did they get it there?
They mentioned on the broadcast when I watched the North Dakota game that
there was one at Baxter Arena.
That it was the fifth time in 7 years or something like that they've won it.
Yeah, and I guess it depends on in the season, because obviously you can clinch that before the season is over, so it could happen kind of at any time.
In this case, they clinched it and they still have a series to come down here and play. So.
Well, I'm sure all of the busy bees on the internet will look that up and find out the exact number of times another team has won either the Penrose Cup or whatever, the conference cups were.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have no idea.
I'm just glad
prior to NCHC.
I'm just glad we don't have to watch it next weekend. Let's look at that as a real positive.
After the debacle in Miami that we're going to talk about, I figured that was a better place to start than an unfortunate series in Miami that we didn't score a single goal.
Yeah, we got blanked for the entire weekend.
Oh man, and I feel a little better because this happens. I mean, it happened to my kids' teams this weekend. You played a great game. You had a ton of chances. You just came up against a hot goaltender. I wouldn't even say that for UNO.
No.
We, top to bottom, I'm struggling to find anything good to say. And I don't, we've talked about this, just you and I, about the vision of the podcast and kind of what we want to do. And we didn't want to be negative. And we always said, we're not here to call out specific players or, make generalized comments about anything. We try to stay fairly positive with our outlook as fans of the Omaha Mavericks.
We try to keep an even keel for sure.
This was probably, even with everything last season, this is probably the two worst games I've had. This was a team, this wasn't, North Dakota last year. This wasn't Denver, this wasn't this perennial powerhouse team that we struggled against. This was Miami. And we top to bottom, with the exception of maybe one period, it looked like the worst team on ice.
What's interesting about this is that going into the season, you're looking at the schedule, and last season we only won 9 games. And you go into this season, and we have 4 games against Miami. You figure that if we're going to get wins this season, some of them will come against Miami.
2 or 3, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We didn't win a game against Miami this season. We tied a game, and then we lost the tie.
Yep.
And that was back in November. I mean, I don't...
12 possible points, and we came away with 1.
So, I have made this comment before on this podcast, and to you, and to Bridget, and to other fans online and on social media. When a team is kind of out of the conference points race, and especially you're always in the points race, but when you're out of the, kind of contention for a home ice slot in the conference, and when you're not, high enough in the pairwise rankings to realistically do anything in your sub 500 team. You know, sometimes at this point in the season, it's difficult to be motivated. You know what I'm saying? In your mind,
Absolutely.
you start to rationalize things. Well, we can't get home ice. So if we have to go on the road, does it really matter where we go and play on the road? Because at the end of the day, if we want to do anything after the first round of the conference playoffs anyway, we're going to have to beat good teams in the conference finals in St. Paul in order to get to the NCAA tournament. So, you know, let's just kind of, phone it in and
Yeah, players, especially seniors, I mean, start thinking about, what's next instead of what's now. And
are they going to show up here? Are we going to see them in playing for, the Albuquerque Squidworms of the
yeah, I mean,
ECHL here at some point down the road?
yeah.
It's that all comes into play. So there's
But
part of me that wonders if that's happening. Now, you look at the other side of the ice this weekend, and you have Miami, a
hmm
team which truly has nothing to play for this season. Then they've had a string of just bad seasons. And the fact of the matter is, they come out, they win their first game at their home arena since last November. That it's crazy. Not only do they win one game, they win two games, and they shut out UNO doing it.
right.
And UNO on paper and in actuality should be a stronger team than Miami. And those two teams that are below us in the conference standings should be teams that we compete against and match up against very, very well. Now, I understand that we lost Taylor Ward. And I guess I would ask you this, Jason. Do you think losing Taylor Ward was a big enough loss in the roster that it just completely threw the team, upside down? Or do you think this was just, like I said, kind of a lack of motivation because there isn't like a lot of things to get excited to play for right at the moment?
I think that losing Ward was a big hit, and I don't want to say anything that would diminish
You don't want to
his
trivialize that.
contribution,
No. He is
right?
he is an exceptional player, a
Right.
special player on the team for sure. But
But if this team can't win without him, then I go back to the same comment that I would make to respond to what you had just said, which is, where is your coach in that? Because if you've got a team that has nothing to play for, then your coach isn't giving them a reason. Like, what are you doing
okay,
here?
this is a tough one, okay? Because one of the knocks against Dean Blaze, back in, for a
Right.
number of years was that Dean Blaze's teams kind of faded in late February, early March. Now, if it's easy to look at a schedule grid and say, look, we faded in early March. Dean Blaze apparently forgot how to coach when March rolled around.
Right.
I don't think that that's true at all. A lot of times it was a situation like this where we were out of home ice in the conference race, and our pairwise was either really, really good that we knew we were going to make the NCAA tournament. That would have been the 2014-15 season. Or it was a situation where we were kind of out of it pairwise wise.
Right.
And so it's just in your mind. And I don't think it's the coaches, because I don't think the coaches are doing anything differently. I just think sometimes players in their minds start to rationalize things.
Yeah, but as a coach, I feel like it's your job to recognize that and counteract that. Because if your players are the type that can get into that mindset, then, you know, like, everyone thinks of a coach in the sense of the X's and O's and the guy on the bench and what we see as a product of the game, right?
Sure.
But one of the things as a coach that I've learned is that the most important stuff a coach does are the things that you don't see. And that's one of the reasons actually why I've all been a fan of Gabnett since he was hired, is that he talks about the things that are long term. He talks about things that matter in the future,
right,
as well as matter now. Having the right attitude, setting the right expectations,
focusing on
competing.
and in many respects focusing on today,
Right.
getting better each day,
But
focusing on that process,
having a goal for the outcome, having
sure,
a long, like not just ignoring that there's something else out there. Because if you ignore that there's something in your future, then it's easy to say, well, there's also nothing for me now, so who cares why go through it, right?
right.
And that's when you start to get that attitude. And I thought our team last year fell into that a lot.
They did. They almost from the get go last season. It was yeah.
And so there's that leader, and I can't put everything on the coach. I feel like a large part of that, if that is the problem, obviously I need to asterisk this with, I don't know no one knows what the issue is, because if anyone knew what the issue was, they'd fix it. So we're all speculating as to what's going on, but I feel like the majority of the weight is on the coach. But you also look at the team and saying, you've got seniors on these teams that need to bring these kids along and say, look, this is what we have to play. Like, redefine what we're doing here. Because we went into this with a chance to have a favorable matchup.
Yeah. Honestly, yeah, finish strong, have a favorable matchup. No question about it. Now, right now, because Western and Denver have kind of been, flip-flopping back and forth, it's like, well, where do we want to be? Do we want to be fifth? Do we want to be sixth? Which is more advantageous? I think they'd both be incredibly difficult. I tend to put a little bit more of this weekend's performance in particular on the players, because I think this series could have gone better. But it kind of reminded me of last season where, the other team scores the first goal, and that was kind of it for the rest of the night. It felt like that. It felt like they were playing without passion. It felt like, I don't know, it was a very lackadaisical performance.
This is the first time this season that it felt like last year.
Right.
Like, it felt like this team, and maybe it is the Taylor Ward thing. Maybe that was the, without him we can't win kind of feeling, because I really felt last year, and we talked about this if you go back to last season's podcast and stuff, we were like, this team just seems to, like, they come out and they're playing well, and then something doesn't go their way,
and they fall apart.
A bad penalty or a strange goal or something, and then they fall apart, right? So maybe this is the first time that we really felt from an adverse, from an adversity standpoint, exactly, that we were under the gun.
Maybe not so much for these two games, because I think even without Taylor Ward, UNO has enough talent to beat Miami. I kind of wonder if it's Taylor's out. He's a terrific player. We need him. He makes things happen. He scores.
Mm-hmm.
And without him, we're not going to go anywhere in the postseason anyway. I mean, right. I wonder if that mindset's getting into, or we're not going to go very far without him. So I wonder if they've almost, and I'm a little, like you, I'm a little bit concerned if that is the mindset that's set in. Because there are other talented players on this team. And I mean, I would be very concerned if Taylor is that big of a linchpin in this team's, offensive success, that he's kind of a motivating force, a motivating factor. Because we've seen other guys have terrific performances on lines that didn't involve Taylor Ward. So it's...
I think you have to get back to what does the future hold for these players in this team, and realize that whatever happens this season is a stepping stone or building block towards whatever that end goal is.
I would say it is a little concerning, though, that in our last 8 games, we have only won 2.
Right.
We won the Saturday game against Western and then the Friday game against Colorado College. And if you had told me that in those 8 games where you're going to play Western, Duluth, Colorado College, and Miami, I would have looked at that and I would have been like, man, you've got Western at Baxter Arena. You've got Colorado College and you've got Miami, I'm looking at that and I'm thinking we can win 4 games, maybe 5 games. And all of a sudden, we're looking very, very mortal here at the end of the season. Now, some people might be worried with North Dakota coming in, but North Dakota is one of those teams that everybody gets up to play regardless of where their place is in college hockey. So I'm assuming we'll play well. And as you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, they clinched the regular season conference championship. So, or at least a share or what, I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out there. I think they clinched it. If they had the trophy presentation,
that at least that's what they announced, and obviously with the presentation, I mean, it sounded like they've locked it up. I mean, statistically, with the points, Minnesota Duluth could tie North Dakota. North Dakota must have the tiebreaker against Duluth.
Yeah.
Because Duluth could pick up.
You're right.
They've got St. Cloud. They could pick up
They
6
could pick
points.
up 6 points.
Which would put them at 53, which would tie them with North Dakota if North Dakota loses both to Omaha. So
yeah,
they could tie in points. So
I have no idea, but yes, Jason and I are going with what he saw in the game.
I'm going with they handed the trophy. I watched them hand the trophy to us.
Okay, so
I'm
Jason
like,
watched
whatever.
them hand the trophy. I'm just so gun shy at this point in the season because you guys you're hemming and hawing and all that other stuff. So yeah,
if it's wrong, you might want to call the commish because like I saw him
paging Josh Fenton. Josh Fenton was in Grand Forks last night.
You jumped the gun, Fenton.
So they they don't have a lot to play for, but they're thinking about NCAA tournament and other stuff at this point. But
they also may be playing it safe. They may be thinking we've got a tournament run to win the NCHC tournament.
They might rest some key players.
Definitely in an NCHC.
Or give another goaltender an opportunity this weekend. Sure.
We not see a top goaltender. The top end talent, the top lines may not get 20 minutes of playing time. They might get cut down. In all honesty, as a coach, I probably would I wouldn't bench him. I hated that.
Right.
I just don't like coming in cold to something, right?
You got to be careful.
But yeah, I mean, I'd put in, the backup goaltender both nights.
Sure.
If I was coaching North Dakota, you'd see the backup goaltender both nights, barring something crazy. You would see probably 12 to 16 minutes from the top 2 lines, and third and fourth line's going to get.
They might get more time.
Heavy playing time.
Which is a great opportunity for you to kind of build your depth going into the postseason. So that's a great opportunity for them. But here's the interesting thing. After we get swept by Miami, Miami is only 4 points behind us in the conference standings. So it is conceivable that they could end up in 6th place and we could end up in 7th, which means we're going to go play at Duluth. So that's another team that we haven't had any success against.
Western can catch Michigan.
Or when Western can catch... No, I know what you were saying there. Western can catch Denver.
Yeah, right. Western can catch Denver.
And honestly, St. Cloud's right in the mix too. And that could have been us. Could have been us. A few weeks ago, that was us. We could have been in the conversation.
Denver will have home ice. They can't fall to 5th. But St. Cloud could be 4th. Western could be 5th. Western could be 3rd.
Yeah, I mean, St. Cloud's sitting there at 33 points right now.
So here's the thing is, you're looking at it going, okay, well, obviously Western has a ton to play for against Miami.
Yeah.
Denver always plays Colorado College. It's in state.
And regardless of the records, CC and Denver series,
they're always tight. They're always good
tough.
games.
I'm looking at the standings here. I think Denver can fall out of the top 4 standings. They're sitting at 37 points. Western Michigan's at 35.
Oh, that's
and
right.
St. Cloud's at 33.
39, yeah.
I mean, St. Cloud State could have home ice when people had just kind of left them for dead. Yeah. And that's
so those 3 teams could finish in any order.
And who knows where.
And you also have to look at those teams. They're all 10-win conference teams.
Right.
They're already double digits.
Yep.
So there will be a team, and I don't know. There will be a team that has to go on the road in their first conference tournament game with double-digit wins.
Absolutely, which is tough to do in this conference on an annual basis. So that's what I'm saying. So
So it's hard to say who we get.
It
right?
is. I mean, I don't think Miami will go into Western and sweep them or get 4 or 5 points against them. But who the hell knows? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I don't.
I mean, they only need 4 because they have the tiebreaker against us.
Yeah, is the tiebreaker head to head, or is this one of the funky things in the conference?
The first tiebreaker is head to head.
I didn't know if the first tiebreaker was head to head or if it was conference record.
No, the first tiebreaker is head to head.
Okay. You can tell I'm just totally uncertain about the conference race right now because we got ourselves kind of behind an 8 ball. But that's the thing. I mean, they could conceivably do that.
Right.
I wouldn't have thought we were going to drop to 7th a few weeks ago, but here we are.
Which goes back to your point of there's stuff to play for here.
There is.
Like, there's a reason to do this. And, there's some value in being the spoiler. Being the team that comes in and just messes with someone's season and screws up someone's plans. And why can't that be Omaha for a change? Why can't we come in and shock people, and win some games? Maybe go on the road and win a tournament game. But you've got to start, if you want to do that, if you want to be that team, you've got to start that now. You have to go into the series against North Dakota and prove that you're a force to be reckoned with.
You do. You've got to be playing good hockey going into the conference tournament. We've watched UNO teams over the years that struggled right at the end, and they're like, "Well, we're going to regroup," and they'll come out and they'll look pretty strong in that first conference playoff game, but it usually doesn't hold the whole weekend over the course of the best of 3 series. But yeah, I pulled up the NCHC tiebreakers for my own edification. And yes, so if 2 or more teams are tied in the standings, and all teams have played a balanced schedule against one another, which we have against Miami. We played 4 games, 2 at home and 2 there. The seeding for the NCHC tournament shall be determined by the team with the best NCHC regular season winning percentage among the games played against the other teams tied in the standings. So, yeah,
they're only one other team. So
yeah, exactly. I mean, they would
for those trying to listen and follow. They do that because there's a possibility that you have 3 teams tied with the same number of points, and so that's why they say it's a winning percentage in those, because
against teams and have balanced numbers and we do against Miami. It would just be with us against Miami. But the fact of the matter is, if we get no points next weekend and they find a way to get 4 points, we're in 7th place and we're going to Duluth. So. Potentially we're going to Duluth.
But there you go. 1 win and we're done. We know where we sit, right?
Yep.
You get 1 win and you're 6th.
Yep.
And then it's just a question of what happens in all these other games that you can't control to figure out where you're going.
Right. I know it's
ultimately it comes down to you played terrible in Miami. You need to learn from the mistakes. Yeah. And you need to just refocus and get ready for North Dakota. Because that was a terrible series, and they just need to get it out of their head. And
didn't it feel to you like, I mean, weren't there moments watching that series where it's like, well, they've just given up, the season's over. It ended last Saturday night against Colorado College, and that's it.
Yeah, there was a lot of times where I'm like, they're just, it's like they just didn't know what to do. They were lost at times. It was just really,
and literally it was just a few weeks ago that we were really excited about the fact that the last 3 weeks of the season we get CC at home, Miami on the road, and we get North Dakota to close out the regular season at Baxter Arena, and you're thinking this looks really good for us, and now it's not looking so good. So,
but it's like we said earlier this season, it's a young team, so we expect a lot of ups and downs. And so hopefully, we've had some downs and now we can bounce back. But you know, I know Coach mentioned it, Gabnet mentioned it in one of the press conferences, but when last weekend when Ward went down, said, you know, when you lose a player like that, it's an opportunity and a time for the next guy up to step up.
Yeah.
And I look at Anaheim in the NHL and what's happened with them. They were in a position where they were, you know, pretty relegated to the fact that, you know, they weren't going to make the playoffs. They, you know, and I know it's a different beast in the NHL, but stick with me.
Okay.
And, you know, so they go to the trade deadline and they, you know, move some assets and stuff for some future prospects. They're looking ahead. They're saying it's time to build from the ground up again.
Right.
You know, let's move some things that are helping us now that we don't need, because someone else is willing to pay for it because they need that help now. And you think, okay, they're going to be worse. They sold off the things that were doing well. You expect, you know, you expect lower results.
Yeah, you're just.
And then these kids come in from the minor leagues, and you're going, stop it, quit trying so hard, because like you're ruining our lottery pick. But that's what we need. Like the Mavericks need that player to come up and say, look, essentially saying, because Ward was Ward, I didn't get a chance to be with those players or on that line or get that much ice time or get that many puck touches or whatever the case may be. This is my chance to prove that I deserve to be on a top two line, because Ward is a top two line forward, top six forward. And so the question becomes, of you bottom six forwards, which one of you thinks that you really should be in that role?
This is one of the things Coach Gabinet mentioned last season a lot, was that there weren't guys on the roster to push the top guys on the roster, and that was a problem. Is that no one was playing they weren't motivated to play better because they had nobody pushing them down on the depth chart. And it's a significant problem. And I mean, we hope, you know, looking at next season and looking at some of the recruits. Now, we were at the dinner with the Mavs a couple weeks ago, and we saw the seniors. And, you know, you look at our roster and you look at, we don't have a lot of seniors on our team, but there are a lot of recruits listed as coming in for the 2020-2021 season. And again, I don't know if all of those guys are coming in, but it does beg the question, you know, are the seniors going to be the only players not returning next season, or are some of the other players going to be cut? I don't know. You know, you just don't know looking at some of the recruiting.
Yeah, and I think from their perspective, I mean, you always want to plan for what you can't plan for. You never know who's going to jump early type of situation. So.
Yeah, I mean, this is not a team you and I particularly worry about that with. You know what I'm saying?
So before we talk about incoming class,
okay,
is it possible to pick players of the weekend? No, I think we at least need to address this.
I'm not going to pick. Who are we going to pick on the weekend? I have Seville. I mean, is he the only?
Seville was on my list, and I say Seville only because, you know, I can't really fault him for that loss. He really didn't get a whole lot of help.
Right.
And so it's not that my problem is that everyone I think of is like, it's not because you played well. It's just because there were a lot of people on this team that played worse than you. So I have a hard time like saying good job to someone for not being the worst on the team.
Right.
I don't think it was Sullivan, or I don't think it was Seville's fault. You know, I think Sullivan played pretty well. I was glad to see him in because there were rumors that he wasn't going to play. Right. But he's been a bright spot all season. So
yeah, I mean,
I just nothing was working. Like power play didn't work. Penalty kill was lost.
I don't think I can do a player for the weekend.
So, yeah, I agree. I think it's hard.
You get blanked by Miami. I mean, here's the thing. If you'd gotten, you know, shut out in 2 games up at Duluth, that's one thing. Right. Or at Denver even, that's one thing. But at Miami.
Again, the playing. Like, it's not so much that we lost. It's not so much that we couldn't score a goal. It's like, I just didn't see anything on that team in either game that I can look to and say, you were trying, you were doing
I didn't see
what
a
you needed to
I
do.
didn't see a will to fight is
Yeah.
what I didn't see. So I don't know.
I'm with you. We can't really pick.
We're gonna forego the player of the week segment.
Amazing.
For the first time this season.
Yeah. So back to incoming. We're losing a few seniors. We've got some kids coming in.
6 seniors. And the seniors that we're losing, just to throw this out there, Timu Polkinen, Dean Stewart, Tristan Keck, Ryan Jones, Jordan Clare, Zach Jordan.
Okay.
So 6 guys. And if elite prospects is to be believed, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 3 defensemen and 7 forwards coming in next season. Now, I don't necessarily know that all those players will be coming in next season. But I get the sense a few of the guys like Tyler Rollwagon, Caden Bolson, Brock Bremer, Matt Miller, some of those guys will be coming in. It's hard to tell at this point. We'll know more after the end of the season. But again,
so needs from a fan's perspective, from a guy who does a lot of research on these things, what do you think the UNO team that we have now needs? And that could be a need of, we're losing this player and we need someone to fill that role. That's fine. But what do you feel like we need out of this next class? And is it coming from this class?
Well, I think you need more kind of pure scorers on the team. I think you need guys who can put up points, put up assists, get the puck in the right place. That's what I think you need on this team. If we're going to go with the assumption, and I'm not ready to go with the assumption that, Taylor Ward out of the lineup, kind of throws off your ability to put the puck on net. And I understand that there were some goals on Friday night that, clanged off a post, but obviously that happens every game. That's what we need. We need some guys who can get the puck on net. And then I think, again, it goes back to, I think we need stronger defensive play out of this team. We've had some good games this season, but ultimately we have lapses, and there are moments when we give up what look to be, easy, kind of quick goals for our opponent. And that's the hard thing to tell at this point.
The hard thing is even if they are, a point a game producer at whatever level they're at right now, who's to say they can make the jump when they come into the NCHC and have to play college hockey? And
you never know how they'll mesh with other players. You don't always know what the composition of the roster that they're playing with looks like. They're obviously playing with a who's who of NCAA hockey recruits, so you just don't know. It's hard to tell, and that's kind of where we're at. As I said before, Taylor Ward was one of Dean Blaze's final recruits. It might have been his final recruit. His dad, Dixon Ward, played for Dean back at North Dakota. And Taylor Ward was a statistical giant in the BCHL with the Pennington V's his final season. And so, some of these guys have had good, solid seasons, but we haven't seen, some of those kind of breakout players statistically when you're looking at the skaters on the offensive side of the ice. So that's going to be...
So what I hear is from you, correct me if I'm wrong here, is you feel like we need a goal scorer, pure goal scorer.
Yeah.
And that you don't feel like it comes in the 2020-2021 class.
Well, it's hard to tell at this point. And some of these guys, have had quite a bit of playing time, and so some of them look solid. Guys like Brock Bremer, Caden Bolson, and Tyler Rollwagon was a guy that when I wrote a profile of him last season that I was impressed with. So, I think that there's something there. And I think these guys potentially can become that. But I don't see a guy, I don't see, it's not like, for example, like UNO's like 04, 05 or 05, 06 class where you saw guys coming in that were, in the top 20 of the USHL in scoring. that's one of the things right now that, again, that doesn't always tell the whole story, but, um, you know what I'm saying? Again, it's a tough thing. It's a tough thing to say.
Yeah.
And I don't
I
mean to sound, purposely, tepid here on the thing. And we'll know more once the season's over and the junior league playoffs and all of that are done. We'll definitely take a look, and we'll probably talk about it on a future podcast. But it's a challenge at this point in time. You know what I'm saying?
I agree. I think that our defense has been average
Right.
a lot of the season.
It's been suspect for
I
sure.
think we need some role players back there, I think. I think we might get that from some of these guys. Guys that have good talent, are good puck responsible.
Sure.
They're not just going to give the puck away. We seem to do that a lot, try to force things, and turnovers have killed us in some of these games. Denver in particular, So, yeah, I could see us getting that. I agree that I don't know if it's I don't know. I mean, I think we need it to amp the offense. We need more offense.
Yeah.
I don't know if it necessarily comes from a particular goal
a
scorer.
lone player, yeah.
I think that it comes from guys that can work well in Gabnett's system.
Yeah.
And
guys that potentially mesh well
right
on the second and third line type players.
Or
yeah.
We need someone. I mean, someone has to, one of these guys coming in order for us to have success next season, at least one of these forwards needs to come in and say, I am a top 6 forward as a freshman.
Right.
And if we can't get that out of them, I think we're going to struggle. And so I look at it saying, well, who's likely to be that guy?
I think it'd be like a guy like Brock Bremer, who you and I actually saw him when he played with Muskegon a couple of seasons ago. He's had a good, solid season. He's a small guy, but he was playing on that team with Nolan Sullivan.
See, and that's the thing. That's the questions come in, right? Like, all right, plus side to him. He's played with Sullivan.
He's a quick, fast, scrappy little player. Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
I think the negatives, then you look at him and say he's small in the best league the best conference in college hockey.
Yep.
And so, yeah, he's been able to do it. Can he keep doing it? That's a question mark.
Right.
Some people will say yes and some people will say no, and that's a matter of opinion based on the information that you have. And I'm not here to speculate on those things. I'm saying that that's the question that sits in front of him. And the only person that answers that question is him. Because if he comes in here and says, yeah, I am that good and I'm going to show you, then that's an optimistic sign for UNO in the future.
Right.
Matt Miller, I hear a lot about him being a very responsible.
That's exactly, that's one of the things that we learned from in the research last season. He seemed like one of those responsible players. Right. He'd originally been a Michigan State recruit. Seemed like he'd be a really good guy coming in, kind of like maybe a Nolan Sullivan type of guy, that kind of a little bit more mature, kind of leader type of a player.
One of the guys I talked to, I was asking him, I'm like, well, what does he kind of compare to, just back and forth with him. And he said, if you look at the Mavs' current roster, he's very much a Kevin Conley kind of guy.
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
So you would expect him to learn the ropes, take a leadership position down the road, but he's that stable guy where you kind of know what you're getting from him. He won't have very many off nights. And that could be good. I mean, sometimes you don't need one 40-point guy. You need a couple 20-pointers because you need guys that you can rely on a regular basis so that other teams can't just key in on
Yep.
this kid this one time.
And obviously, Miller and Bremer are a little bit more mature. They're a little bit older than some of their counterparts in the USHL, and that makes a difference too. I mean, you look at a younger player like Blaine Warnert, who comes out of the Minnesota high school hockey ranks, and he's a guy who doesn't have high statistical numbers, but he looks like he's got the size that you and I are looking for, and
yeah, 6'5". I mean,
yeah, 190 pounds. Yeah, absolutely. So he'll be a big boy. So that's one of the things I'll tell you that Gabinet has recruited the last couple seasons are big players. And so, again, it's kind of like the recruiting class that came in for this season. There are a lot of unknowns. And a lot of those guys performed very well this season for the Mavericks, but they weren't, the kind of the superstar, highly touted recruits coming in. They came in and they chipped away and they fit in well and they've made a difference. And so that's what I'd say. Lots of unknowns coming in. And honestly, like I said, we don't know who's going to be coming in next season of these recruits lists. And we're going by what Elite Prospects has on their site. I know there's going to be some variation on the Heisenberg website and some of the other, recruiting websites. That's what you and I go with because their site's organized very, very well. And it's
easy to follow.
It really is. So again, I don't know. After this weekend, I feel like we need a lot of help. A couple of weeks ago, I wouldn't have felt that way. Right. So it's just, hopefully the team can get back on track. But, again, I don't know if you've looked at any of these other guys and have any other thoughts, but,
I not really. Like the two that I've kind of keyed in on more than anything were Bremer and Miller.
Right.
Just because I'd seen them on prospect lists and I knew guys that were scouting them, and so I could, reach out and kind of say, hey, what can you tell me that I'm not seeing because I don't get to see them as much as you do, kind of thing. The Vincent Nardon is one I know almost nothing about.
Yeah, and I'm trying to remember. I can't remember if I wrote a profile of him or not. And again, we don't follow the BCHL and AJHL and some of those Canadian leagues the way that we do the USHL and the North American Hockey League. But again, I don't know a lot about him either. I recall them being pretty excited. And when he played in the Saskatchewan Junior Hockey League in the 2018-19 season, which was last season, he had 17 goals and 22 assists. But this season, it's 11 goals and 18 assists. So with two teams, so it hasn't been quite as good in that league as it was in the other, so it's just hard to tell from league to league and team to team how things are going to go. So yeah, I mean, there, like you said, there are some of these guys that we've heard a lot about, and there are some of these other guys that we just haven't. But I remember Caden Bolson because he was at UNO during one of the series last season, and he was walking around the concourse wearing a suit, and I noticed some fans were talking to him. So he's a guy, he played at Shattuck St. Mary's, so he's a guy who's been in the USHL for a while now, and he's had, this is his best season. So, hopefully he's developing into the kind of player we need, and I believe he had been a Minnesota recruit. And then when all the turmoil happened with the coaching change and Bob Motzko replaced Don Lucia, he ended up kind of
deciding to go a different direction. Yeah.
So, yeah, it's hard to know at this point, but I think we'll have to revisit this topic when we find out the official roster this summer and see who's actually coming in and take a look at their stats holistically. So
yeah, it'd be a good podcast topic.
Yeah, absolutely. But we need help. So,
so speaking of help, what do we get when we face North Dakota here? Friday, Saturday at Baxter Arena. Senior weekend. I don't know how we perform on senior weekends,
I'd
but
love to have
it's a chance to say goodbye to the guys that have been here for years, been Mavs, been around the community, helped out, and done great things here for the last 4 years. And so,
boy, and you remember last weekend we were talking about how we thought Miami might do well either Friday or Saturday because it was senior weekend. It was emotional. They came out and swept us and blanked us on the weekend. So I would love it if we had a similar weekend against North Dakota. I don't know that it's going to happen. Well, one thing I will say is regardless, North Dakota is one of those teams that has the ability to, bring out the best in their opponents. I was watching a little bit of that game. I didn't see the end when they presented them with the trophy, but I was watching. I can't remember if it was the Friday game or the Saturday game, but they were talking to some of the former alumni who had played years and years ago
Right.
on the team, and one of them referred to North Dakota as the Alabama of, the Alabama football of college hockey. So it's great. Two teams.
I'd argue that's a bit of a stretch, but okay.
Two teams I don't like: Alabama and North Dakota. So
I think Boston College, Denver might have something
and
to
this
say
is one of the things I want to get to. And I was talking about your national championship was Wisconsin this year, and last season it was BC.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to start labeling this the Jason Jinx. We just need you to a team.
Oh, you want me to pick North Dakota next year?
I want you to pick North Dakota or Duluth or Denver. I want you to pick somebody in the conference, because it's like, EA Sports, their Madden football game, whenever they, for years when they would put a player on the cover of the game, that player would get injured. Something bad would happen to the player. So I want Jason just keep picking national champions.
I thought you were gonna say, look at how well BC's doing this year, and maybe I was right. I was just off by a year. So next year, watch out for Wisconsin.
Going to be great. Yep. And so we'll see.
So maybe I'll pick UNO next year.
Yes, please do.
Because it'll jinx us anyways.
Yes, please do.
But then the year after.
Yes, exactly. Then the year after, we're going to
do what a lot of people 2021.
Watch out, we're going to get back to the Frozen Four. So we have North Dakota coming in back on topic. Sorry to segue us there to Jason's national championship pick, but this, I don't know. A couple weeks ago, I was feeling fairly good about this series. I thought, it's a series we could split at home. Yeah. We had success up there back in January. Why not? But I got to tell you, after that lackluster performance at Miami last weekend,
right?
I don't know.
It really taints your vision of it.
It does. It taints my vision completely. I don't know where to go, and there are a lot of stories within the story. Are we motivated going into the series? Are they motivated? Because they've had a terrific season, and this isn't a series they necessarily need to win, but they want to keep their momentum going for postseason and pairwise and things like that. I don't know. I hate to count us out, but I got to be honest with you. There's a big part of me here that's...
Well, I will say I feel we get swept.
Well, that's what I was going to say too, but...
I say that because prior to the Miami series, I would have said that we would have split. And so after seeing our play, I go, maybe not. Maybe we can't. I don't know where it comes from. I don't want it to happen, but it's I try to be a little bit of a realist. The realist in me is...
You look at the depth they have on the team, and you look at the scores that they have on that team, and it starts with Jordan Kawaguchi, who's a name that you hear every time you tune into one of those games. 15 goals, 30 assists on the season. I mean, it's phenomenal. And then guys, down the scoring roster like Weston Michaud, Grant Mismash, Colton Poolman. They've got a stacked roster. They were down a little bit the previous couple seasons, but they're back. And so, hell, dude, I don't know, but I'm with you. I'm thinking we get swept.
Yeah, you also have all the fanfare of senior weekend that messes with schedules, and we talked about this when we talked about the parents' weekend, right? And kind of the jinx around parents' weekend. Part of that is because with the family year, you're given a little bit more leeway, and your usual routine is thrown off, and that I think affects the team. And so I think being down with injuries and not having a whole lot to play for, and playing, arguably one of the better teams in the country. And on top of that, we're going to be hanging out with family instead of in class studying or
I'd imagine we'll see a fair number of parents here this weekend. And I don't know. Look at how we performed my Miami senior weekend seemed to throw us off.
Yeah.
So who knows what'll happen on our senior weekend, right? Maybe we'll respond and be fine. Maybe
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 that's what they need. Maybe that's what gives them a will to fight.
The extra motivation. It's our final.
I can't look at that saying that it will, based on the things that we've seen, and so that's why I have to say I think we get swept.
I think we can only hope to have a performance that like St. Cloud had in St. Cloud a week or so ago when they very nearly swept North Dakota, and a lot of people weren't expecting that. That would be fantastic, but it's going to be awfully difficult, and I'm
not impossible, but a challenge.
Not impossible, but a challenge. So, yeah, I'm going to say we get swept. You're going to say we get swept.
We'll see what happens.
We'll see what happens. Well,
until then.
Until next time, you can follow Mavpuck on Facebook, follow Mavpuck on Twitter. You can listen to back episodes of this podcast at Mavpuck.com. Let's everybody get out and support the Mavs this weekend. Let's cheer loud. Let's try to get something done against the green and black monsters from Grand Forks. And until next time, go Mavs.
Go Mavs.